Dr. Stern, I'm sure, has some, interesting stories or comments to make about some of the things that he's seen with the program. So, to give Dr. Stern
good. Yeah. That's the major issue. You can play basketball. Well, it's good to hear success stories. Very, very good. And I'm sure that between Mrs. Thomas, who does the clinical nutritional assessments in the office, and the growth process that we've achieved at the Holistic Center, we have any number of successes, thousands of successes. I'd like to share a few reasons why they're failures. At first, because then it's easier to come back to let you understand. It's a matter of, when you talk about patience, it has to be patience with yourself. It's like a measuring process where you can balance yourself. And so that to run the program, realistically, you have to be running it on yourself, which is designed to clean you of the way you have been thinking, limits to where you can go with a human being, how you can interact, how you can help them connect, how harmonious are you in your own frame, and how you can then relate to other human beings in a more harmonious way. In short, the technical training that most healthcare practitioners get is so limited to looking at one issue or at best two issues, and the question of to be or not to be is really not a question, because conceptually all of us have taken a healthcare orientation with the belief that we have an answer, and a very specific answer. When a human being doesn't comply to our answer, immediately we cast some type of redirection to them, either referring them out in disgust, or, in all fairness, recognizing that possibly there's a failing in ourselves, but it's highly remote, that realistically we will ship them off. We call them get a consultation, but it's really, in essence, dumping a human being to their responsibility. So therefore, if you recognize that for myself, my training is in metabolic disease processes, endocrinology. I'm very mechanistically oriented as far as breaking things down into their smaller systems to understand the chemical milieu that they derive, their own physiologic formations, and I'm really interested in this. And for years, this was my driving force. I did a lot of basic research, and realistically, when it comes to putting a human being into a base form of metabolism, it's obviously only a small part of what you're looking at. Fortunately, I guess for myself, my training at Temple Medical School, as excellent as it was, from the standpoint of medicine, was not able to keep me from asking very pertinent questions about human beings. And unfortunately, that's the problem. You get involved in a training session where you are geared to one specific attitude, and to violate that attitude, you'll be labeled as a radical, non-traditional, a violation of the creed that you live by. Hippocrates will become upset with you. The absurdity of that, of course, is that if you read what Hippocrates has done, and I have some of the very early work that has been reprinted, Hippocrates was an excellent holistic practitioner, superb practitioner. And obviously that's something that in our present state of mind is very difficult to comprehend, how we can incorporate a known entity like traditional medicine with its intervention crisis process into the various steps of allowing a person's case to evolve, and for us to have the patience that it takes for us to live the anxieties and hurts with our patient in an honest transference, so that we know, we can trust that at least In that situation, the person can relieve themselves and release themselves of the issues of mass buildup, and that realistically we are sophisticated enough to be able to take the mass that they're attempting to leave with you and get rid of it from yourself. That's really the problem. Most practitioners are very frightened. And by reasonable sense of looking back, I think we're pretty smart to be frightened. We are literally trying to attack Godzilla gorilla with a cat pistol. Because if that person doesn't come right into conforming to our direction, immediately we're going to sense there's a potential problem. And that's where we get into difficulty. It's not a potential problem, it is a problem. The human beings coming in, they don't really even know why. They just want to feel better. They don't know what it is. They don't know their connections. They don't know the causes. They certainly can enumerate effects. And that's the absurdity. For me, a person would come into me, and if they didn't have diabetes, severe thyroid disease, some type of a hormonal imbalance, or for their own sake, if their weight wasn't due to the fact their thyroid didn't work, they were in a lot of trouble. They'd come to the wrong doctor. Well, in taking a more, I guess, a wider latitude, a holistic approach, you're able to see that there are so many more available ways for you to look at a person's case. What the SAF offers you is a sequence that's very important to allow a person who's basically chaotic coming to you. Fortunately, you would hope that as the healthcare practitioner, you are not chaotic. However, assuming you are not chaotic and organized, they are coming to you to ask you to take this chain of chaos to them and help them organize it. Help them break it down. Help them get a sequence to their life. Help them make some sense out of their own case. That's what they're asking for. There is a notorious sequence, I will tell you. It begins with this number. And if you talk about this over and over again, human beings that have this number on front have some form of distortion in the way they look at life. Now, I see a lot of healthcare practitioners that sneak into the office, myself, unbeknownst to the world, this surgeon even, which is almost impossible to believe that a surgeon could orient themselves to this, but they do it because there's a lot of people changing. But healthcare practitioners have a lot of 15 up front in their case. In fact, I have been blessed with that result for myself, one of the ways that I look at problems. 15, it has to do with the pineal gland, or when you look at things, and how your sensory perception. It has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with survival mechanisms, skepticism, how you make a big deal out of little things and a little deal out of big things. Does it sound familiar at all? Is it capable of addressing any of that? Well, 15 goes a lot further than that. 15 has to do with a lot of fantasy, such as having the fantasy that you're going to come into an office and get fixed. 1, 2, 3. When you have human beings that come in with this kind of a fantasy, you have a sneaky suspicion that no matter what you do, nothing's really going to help them. And then this is geared with hundreds of thousands of dollars of computer integrated programs and an incredible way of looking at the case, and you really have tremendous advantages, and you still are going to have a lot of skepticism. It really won't work. Mental aberration, the way the person thinks, their attitude, their experiences, all this bringing to the fore the fact that even though you identified with them a common ground to work on, they're being defeated almost constantly so that they can't really get well. And that has to do with the way you think, your mental fix, very, very serious consequences. Now, I'm putting that up there to let you know that this is very common. Obviously, it is not only so common, but it's also treatable. However, these are the patients. I can envision that for anyone who has never had experience with this program and has not worked on it for themselves, if the first 10 patients they had were like this, you'd call Joe up immediately, take the computer system back, nothing works, it's impossible. And the reason is because whatever you believe you can give them, the most important thing that I found that helps them is time. Really. You identify the problem with it, you map out a program, and then you step back. Let them think about it, look at it, see what they want to do. What I tend to do is I call it talking to the person's mindset that really has an evil inclination, and then talking to the part of them that's soulful or spiritual that really brought them to a holistic center in the first place. There is no disease known to human beings that would bring them to a holistic center. Diseases are too smart for that. They're not going to go somewhere. They have all this control. Why would they go somewhere where they're going to be broken down? So they will immediately look for all sickness centers, places where you can get drugs. They're going to. They're going to say go there. They're never going to say go to a holistic wellness center. They would never do that. So therefore, when a person comes in, even when they have this up front, I know they still want to get well. There's a part of them that wants to get well. However, you have to address it. And I would only caution you to temper your enthusiasm with the reality that human beings, with the distorted perception and the skepticism, when you give a whole program out, which has taken years of Joe Scogna's work and years of clinical application, and you map out an entire program and it looks beautiful, please don't take offense if the patient spits at it or negates it. Really, it's a very realistic process that happens. And the best way to learn it is to be able to step back, not take it personally, be comfortable about it, know you have some information. And I have learned my newest direction with this is that a human being in this position, I listen to what they have to say, and then I say to them, do me a favor then. Since you know this doesn't work, would you go back and ask your mental process what the real answer is? I'd be interested to put it into the computer. Now that's a very nasty question to ask them, because obviously they don't have the answer. But this is what you have to understand, is that there is a battle all the time within a human being that wants to get well and the disease that wants to survive as an entity. Healthcare practitioners are living with this battle with themselves and how they relate it to their patients. Watch out for the 15 up front. Pay a lot of respect to it and for it. Learn that this will be the case that will teach you probably the most that you could ever learn. Because it's going to teach you how patient you are, how much you really listen, how much you're trying to get across to people. And I can tell you lots of war stories too that are really, really tough. But I'm going to end it with a really, really good case. Because most of the cases are terrific. People do fantastically well. I had a young lady that just came into the office not too long ago, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Her presenting complaint is what to do about high dactyliform mold, which is a pretty unusual type of problem for a young woman, and it acts much as a cancer would act. It's associated with very high levels of hormones that you see more typically in the pregnancy stage, and very disconcerting. Usual treatment is a chemotherapeutic program, usually with methotrexate. Yet, before you ever got to this, I had this patient in front of me who has not had this treatment yet. And that's not to say this patient's not going to need this treatment. But the important thing is I had a whole sequence of information on her, and in the back of her case was this. She had a whole lot of numbers, and in the back of her case, that unaware area, the area that's not available for you to understand, this 810 is a sequence that you see that has to do with the ovaries and the thyroid and balance electromagnetically. It's telling us that this is a process that you see typically with people who have an abortion process going on. And you have to understand that abortion can mean a lot of things, but It also can obviously mean abortion. Lack of resolution of an abortion process is a very common denominator of what I see in many females. It's unfortunate that a woman's mindset could justify this, but the body keeps telling her, what are you doing? This is wrong. It's a violation. And you can come together with it. But if you don't come together with it, it's going to stay on the disease chain. And that's what this means. So we're talking, her husband is there, and he's answering 95% of her questions. The same thing that you heard. That's because she's very upset and very nervous, and she's afraid she's going to die, and she has a lot of legitimate issues. But the real thing that came out is, she said to me, do you think any of this started with an emotional problem? I could not get a better opening. I was not going to talk about this at all. Because this is in the area of unawareness. You don't do it anymore. You know, in the old days, I would have gone in there and wiped the whole case out. It would have been laid out in front of her. She would have been carried out of the office in a coma. But she would have known the case. Now you learn by experience that you don't do it that way. Well, the magnificent thing is, she gave me the in, and I was able to say, well, was there ever a time in your life when you had either a miscarriage or an abortion? She completely broke down. She said, I know, that's when it started. I know, I had an abortion, and it was the worst thing I ever did, and her husband was crying. I mean, everybody was all upset in the office. I'm upset, I'm teary-eyed, I can't even write on her face. But that discharge, I mean, she went from being a stone, and I mean, you talk about mass with a big M. That's what she was. She was completely rigid, and that's what people look like. You don't need arthritis to be rigid. It helps, but that's what this person was. Talk about this process, change the picture in her mind, let her get a release. She could even get to a sense of forgiving. And what we did, in 10 minutes, she had already seen 7 doctors about this. What we did in 10 minutes time, after we had gone through a whole process of her chemical makeup, changed her entire case. So that instead of racing out to get chemotherapy, she was willing to work more on a release, get her body into better shape. She's going to need chemotherapy, the overwhelming odds are. Just looking at her case and the way things are going. Her mindset, she has her sisters are nurses, her uncle is a doctor, so that no matter what, she leaves the office and she goes outside and she gets bombarded. 8-10 signals. Very, very important. She's done very well. And so I leave you with that information to let you know that you can have a lot of successes, but you also have to temper it.